Hello, this is Lori Elliott with the Afribiz Foundation. Today I'm going to share about our entrepreneurial growth engine, unlocking potential and prosperity through the discipline of innovation. Jim Collins says the great task rarely achieved is to blend creativity intensity with relentless discipline so as to amplify the creativity rather than to destroy it. We start the entrepreneurial growth engine with the person's identity, their personality, their passion and purpose lead to ideas and concepts that can be then turned into ventures. And it is by the ability of the individual to create new combinations out of different components to increase value that innovation thrives. And so in the economy or in business, it is the entrepreneur that helps support the supply side. But what's also interesting about this generic understanding of the individual is that the individual also drives the economy and the opportunities that entrepreneurs have. How does that happen? It has a lot to do with identity, passion, and purpose. Every person has a specific purpose for being and for existing. And when they operate in that, they have a wholly unique identity that has specific needs in order to achieve it. Someone who's a race car driver has different things that they have to go through to be that professional race car driver. Someone who is a scientist has a different path to take. Someone who is a dancer has, again, another path. And in each situation, that person is wholly unique, their path is wholly unique, and their identity is wholly unique. Now, as people require things, necessary things to achieve the fullness of their identity, their destiny, it creates a myriad of needs in society. Now, needs are not actually things like just food and shelter. Needs are anything that is necessary to achieve your destiny. So imagine now that we have a society, which we do now, by the way, that continues to move more and more towards this, where we have demand that is continually changing. And then we have uh, almost constant disruption. At the center of this is the individual. And so, as far as our entrepreneurial growth engine is concerned, we first start with the individual. We start with the founders, the entrepreneurs, the leaders, the venture team, because as they understand more about their identity, their passion, and their purpose, they will then create ideas and concepts that can be turned into valuable ventures. From there, we then look at that as individuals, we can do nothing in and of ourselves. We are, yes, creative beings who can lead and define and create, but it is within the context of other people. So even if someone is a great brain, even if someone has a unique ability, it is typically amplified and increased through interdependence with others. One story that I like really well that's very interesting is that Bill Gates, everyone, when they look at him, they think, wow, he just got there by himself. But in actuality, there were other leaders in Microsoft. And one story that I really like is the fact that he got his first significant investment from a gentleman introduced to him by his mother, who was involved with a country club that this gentleman happened to go to. So it's never in and of ourselves that we get there. So part of our entrepreneurial growth engine is to not only focus on the development and the capacity building and the lifting up of the individual entrepreneur or their teams, it's also getting the ecosystem around the venture in order to amplify what that venture has to offer. So in doing so, it creates what we call a very symbiotic or reciprocal relationship. The relationships are different. Instead of thinking of a group of people as just customers, they're called stakeholders. And in that scenario, you now have a rhythm where everyone benefits in some way, but they also contribute. So for us, in order to see the amplification, the multiplication of a venture, and for that venture to receive the support it needs in order to grow into a sustainable venture, it needs to be working with an ecosystem. So we actually work with a myriad or a diverse set of stakeholders in the local ecosystems in developing nations, like in Africa. And so you see here, we talk about government, religious institutions, civil society, youth, women, and marginalized populations, tribal nations, urban and rural communities. And it's all done in a way that's inclusive, empowering, and collaborative, because how we phrase it is that we share the responsibility and the risk to share the reward. So the idea is we get the ecosystem around the ventures in order to help the ventures grow. It's the same thing if you think of a plant. You put in a seed and you've put it in the soil, but it needs fertilizer, it needs the sun, it needs water. And so basically, many of the resources that a venture needs, particularly during the early stages, can be found in the right type of ecosystem. Next, we then look at the next piece of our process is then to understand how we create sustainable ventures. And so basically, we take the venture from an idea all the way through its entire life cycle, and we call that venture maturation. Why is that important? When ventures are being developed, they need certain things at different times in their development. One of the key problems is that entrepreneurs do not know how to break that code, and we call it venture maturation. Let me give you a simple example. If you had an 8-year-old child, would you give that child the car to drive under normal circumstances? No. You would not give that resource to the child because one, they would not necessarily, they don't know the rules of the road, okay? Two, they may not have the mental and physical capacity to actually manage that vehicle. And so the idea behind venture maturation is, in addition to increasing the value over time of the venture and to see it become sustainable, you also want to ensure that the venture can receive all of the resources available to it at the appropriate time. So in reality, when we're talking about growing ventures, okay, by the leaders, by the entrepreneurs, by the ecosystem, we're really saying that we are preparing the venture to receive more resources, partnerships, technical resources, investors, all of that at an appropriate time. So a venture that is only an idea or a concept cannot access many resources unless, for example, an entrepreneur has collateral or he has influence with an individual who puts their trust in them to give them money. So the idea is that we are working with the venture all the way through the life cycle to ensure that both the entrepreneur, the venture itself, and the ecosystem are working together so that the venture remains sustainable. So now let's take a look at what the growth engine looks like. It's really quite simple. At the top, we have the entrepreneur and venture development aspect. That is the methodology, that venture cultivation that you saw, that takes the entrepreneur and the venture through each phase of its development so that it becomes fully mature. Again, looking at our analogy, like a child who becomes an adult and is able to handle things on its own. And what happens is, in order to see that development happen, then we have the local ecosystem. So, for example, if we are in Nigeria, we might be in a city like Lagos, and that local ecosystem would contribute resources. But there are other ecosystems elsewhere that also contribute. For example, it might be foreign companies who want to have project opportunities in Nigeria. They then put in resources to help entrepreneurs and ventures move along so that there's opportunities for what is called bankable projects. And the idea then is we then synergize between these ecosystems to collaborate and synergize the resources so that the right resources are made available to the right ventures. And again, it's all based on the concept of sharing responsibilities, risks, and rewards. What you put in, you're able to get something out of it. So now what happens when that growth engine is working? That growth engine begins to produce sustainable ventures. And as more and more sustainable ventures are created, developed, and maintained, they then contribute to economic growth. And when you have a myriad of sustainable ventures and economic growth, there are rewards to be shared. If you remember, our growth engine is based on the principle of sharing responsibilities and risks and then sharing rewards. In inputting resources through either the different various players of the ecosystems or the entrepreneurs themselves, they are sharing risk and responsibility. And then now is the opportunity to share in the rewards. So this is actually what our growth engine is. It's very simple, straightforward, even though it has many parts. And now we'd like to ask you to join us. Join us to transform the potential of Africa into the prosperity of Africa. For further information, you can reach out to us at the Afribiz Foundation at www.afribiz.org.